The story you are about to hear is true. It happened to a real person in a real business with real consequences. Names have been withheld, not to protect the innocent, but to keep the focus where it belongs, on the systems that failed and the solutions that followed. This is not just a story. This is a case study in what not to do.
Hi, I'm Julie Floyd, founder of Next Gen Learning Solutions. I help businesses fix what's really broken, not just slap a training on it. Today, I want to share a quick story that started with business cards and turned into a masterclass in what not to do when it comes to systems, communication, and customer service. I was getting ready to attend live network events and I wanted business cards. So I went online and realized that I wouldn't get them in time. The live network events were like within a week, week and a half. So then I remembered that 2 minutes away from my house, there is a print shop. So I had used them before. I was happy with the results. They allowed me to email them designs. They printed them up, went and picked them up. I've also worked in print shops in my prior life, so I understand the different card stocks. I know that there's different finishes like matte, glossy. I know how to design a business card. So that's what I did. I went ahead and I designed a 3.5 by 2 inch business card. I sent the print shop an email, and in the email, I explained I wanted a glossy finish. I wanted it on standard stock. I included that I wanted 100 business cards printed, and I gave the turnaround time 1 week. I also explained to them that if the turnaround time wasn't doable, to just contact me. And I sent the email and went about the rest of my day. I sent a design to their store via email and explained that I had sent the specs. And the guy says, "Print guy isn't here yet." I said, "Okay, thank you." Had some errands to run that day. So I went ahead and just stopped by the store. And I explained everything I had done yesterday, designed the business cards, sent the specs, emailed the store. And I even threw in, that I had this really important networking event that was in about a week. Now it's about a week to go. And I also, said, I'm a reasonably new company and I'm hoping that I can build a partnership with you guys. And he doesn't even acknowledge that with me. And he says, "You said you emailed the design?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "What email did you send it to?" And so I give him the email that I sent the business cards to. And he pulls up my email and he says, "This isn't the right size." And I said, "I designed them to be 3.5 by 2. Is that the size of the standard business cards?" And he's looking at the screen and he says, "It's too big. But you could skip all this and you can pay an additional $30 to have our guy design it." And I smiled and I said, "I am a designer." And I said, like I explained, I'm a new company, so I really am trying to watch my pennies. And he said, "Oh yeah, yeah, I understand." And I said, "So I can use a different program." And I said, "So does he need like the template?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "Thank you." And he says, "Now, if you're going to re-email that, make sure that you are back in the store tomorrow before noon." And I said, "Okay, thank you." And I leave and I go home, redesign it using a different program. I send I piggyback off of the original email, because I just felt like it would save time and possibly let the store owner see how many email that they're getting based on one thing. But I was also kind of glad that I was redesigning it using a different program because I added a few more things to the business card. So I went ahead and I called them as soon as I hit the send button, and I asked if they'd received the email. And the guy seems kind of confused, and he apparently is talking to another guy behind the desk, and says she's talking about her business cards. And the guy takes the phone from him and says, yeah, we got it. And I said, okay, great. I said, thank you. 2 days later, I hear nothing from the store. And so I go online and I see that there is on their website, I can schedule an appointment to talk to their designer. And I'm so excited. Yay. So I schedule an appointment for the next day. And while I'm online, I just go ahead and unregister my spot um, at the networking event, because again, I don't want to show up empty handed. The day of the appointment, 5 days after this adventure began, I show up early, um, and I go inside. So, you walk in, and, you've got your front desk, front counter, and then off to the side is this great big glassed in room, where the printers, and then there's like a conference table off to the side. So I'm standing in line, and I'm thinking, oh, that's probably where I'll sit. We'll review the design. I'll make sure that I sent the right stuff to the print guy, and maybe even sip some coffee. So I'm waiting for my turn. Finally get up to the desk or the front counter, and I explained to the employee that I'm a bit early, but I have an appointment. I scheduled it online. And he just sort of looks at me blankly and says, I'll get the print guy. So up walks the print guy. He barely even makes eye contact with me. And he says, you sent the design to the email? And I said, yes. And he said, I don't get email back there. And he says, is it 3.5 by 2? And I said, yes. And he says, you'll just submit a ticket with those guys. And I said, okay, so you don't want to sit down and take a look at what I did send? And he's like, no, if it's 3.5 by 2, we're good. That's it. No review, no conversation. So I walk up to the counter. Actually, I had to get back in line. And I walk up to the counter, and the employee doesn't skip a beat. He starts filling out a ticket. Um, and but first he gets out this book, and I'm standing there and I'm looking down at it, and it looks like it's got like instructions on how to fill out the ticket. And then so he starts filling it out, and then I said, hey, um, make sure that you use the second email that I sent, the most recent one. I said, because the first one had the original design, but I made some changes. And so he asks me for my email, and he pulls it up, and he's like, oh, you want 100? And I said, yeah. He goes, we only print 200. And I said, okay, that's fine. And he's like, all right. And he's like, okay, no problem. And so while he's typing, another employee walks up and starts talking about what they did the night before. And so I'm standing there, and I'm listening, and I'm just kind of casually eyeballing the ticket to make sure that he's filling it out correctly, because at this point I have changed from customer to quality control. A few days later, I get a voicemail. It starts with hello, and then it just was like some stammering, and then
Hello?
hang up. And I re-listened to it a few times, and I was like, okay. So I checked the number. It's the print shop. So I call. The employee answers. I explain who I am, and I hear them put the phone like to their chest or whatever. Hey, yo, she wants to know if her business cards are ready. And then I hear someone take the phone out of his hand. Yeah, your cards are ready. And I'm thinking, my cards? Is it my proof? I'm supposed to prove the proof. And I say, thank you. And I hop in the car and I head over. I walk in and the employee's all happy and he recognizes me and he goes and grabs a bag and he comes walking out and he hands it to me and I'm like, I was like, oh, your print guy is really confident, isn't he? And he's looks at me kind of strange and I said, I didn't approve a proof. And he's like, yeah, they normally do that. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to take a look at it. So I open up the box and I start looking at the card, and he just goes off and starts helping other customers. So I'm standing off to the side and I look at the card and I start noticing things that are wrong with it. First off, Next Gen Learning Solutions, it's plural. So my email address is wrong and my website is wrong. It isn't the design that I had wanted this from the original, because remember I changed that. And so I'm just standing there waiting for him to finish with the customer, and he's looks at me and I say, can I borrow a pen? And he's like, yeah. And so he gives me a pen. And so I put the card back in the box and I shut the box and I wrote missing S on website and email. And he's looking at me kind of puzzled. And I said, do you see my logo? And he said, yes. And I said, so solutions, there's an S after it. And he's like, oh. And I said, yeah, because like if they try to send an email to me not putting an S, it's not going to work. And then if they go to my website without putting an S after solution, it's not going to work. It's not a website. And he's like, oh, all right, all right. And I said, can you pull up my original design, like the email that I sent? And he's like, yeah. And I said, I kind of wanted to get away from the swirly gray. And he's like, oh, I really like the swirly gray. I think it makes it look professional. And I said, is it going to be extra for color? And he's like, no, no, no. And I was like, okay. And I said, that's interesting. I said, because this is more of like 3 or 4 different colors. And he's like, yeah, no. It's okay. And so he takes the box and he writes on a ticket, what my website really spelled, how it's really spelled, and how my email's really spelled. And he says, I'll take this back to the print guy and you'll hear something back in about 2 or 3 days. So I went home and I started thinking about the process, how this process has gone on. I mean, we're looking at 7 days now. And I started thinking about, all of the gaps, and then, this business side of me thought, this is a great opportunity for the store and also for myself. So I emailed the store owner professionally, of course, offering help with customer service and training. Never heard back. I had it delayed to be there for Monday. But like I said, I never heard back from them. Shortly, like close to the end of the day on Friday, I did get another email. It says, "Hey, Julie, take a look at the proof and let me know what you think." It's still wrong. The logo is off. The LLC is floating underneath the dragonfly like an afterthought. So I reply and advise that the LLC should be After Solutions. And I get an immediate response that says, if I do that, it'll be off-centered. So I replied and said, please use the logo. And then I attached it. One day later, I get an email that says, hey, Julie, your cards are ready. I reply back, can I see the proof, please? A proof is sent, and yes, finally, the business card is correct. But man, that process, it was anything but.
In the world of small business, time is money. And for one customer, both were lost. Julie walked into the print shop expecting a simple transaction. What she got was a frustrating, time-consuming ordeal. She spent 75 minutes designing and emailing. She made 4 trips to the store. She paid $62 for the final batch of cards. And she missed a live networking event, costing her potential clients. Her total loss? $311.50. Meanwhile, the print shop paid for 2 batches of cards, 2 boxes, 2 bags, and over an hour of employee time. Their total cost? $158.83. But the real damage? After researching customer behavior and industry data, we estimate the print shop loses 450 customers a year to poor service. That's $22,500 in lost revenue every single year. These aren't just numbers. They're missed opportunities. They're preventable losses. Because when your team knows what to do and why it matters, mistakes like this don't happen. NextGen Learning Solutions LLC helps businesses uncover the real problems behind the counter, behind the scenes, and behind the numbers, and build solutions that actually work.
First and foremost, I want to thank you for going through the business card adventure with me. What started out as a simple business card order turned into a week-long detour through miscommunication, missteps, and mystery processes. The final product, it's fine, but the journey, it cost me time, money, and momentum. And here's the thing, this wasn't about business cards. It was about broken systems. It was about what happens when no one owns the process. No one checks the details, and no one thinks about the customer experience. That's what I help businesses fix. I don't just build training. I build solutions that actually work. If you feel like your team is stuck in chaos like this, let's talk.